Welcome to our daily Bible devotions. We are now on our day 4 of exploring the teleological argument through the passages in the chapter of a book by Norman Geisler and Frank Turek. As the three brave astronauts in a damaged space capsule accelerate toward the Earth's atmosphere, they will be pulled by the Earth's gravity to a maximum velocity of nearly 25,000 miles per hour. That's almost 7 miles per second. So, this leads us to the anthropic constant number 5, gravity. The gravity that is pulling the astronauts back home is still another anthropic constant. Its strength may be terrifying, but it couldn't be any different for life to exist here on Earth. If the gravitational force were altered by 0.00000000000000001%, our sun would not exist, and therefore, neither would we. That's precision. As the astronauts plummet to Earth in their crippled spacecraft, no one is certain if they will survive the violent and intense hot re-entry. Too many questions remained unanswered. Is the heat shield fully intact? Is the ship really on the right entry angle? Will the entry batteries on the command module work? Will the parachutes deploy properly? To make matters worse, there's a typhoon warning in the recovery area, meaning in the area where they will land and will be recovered. In light of all the uncertainty, the astronauts pay their respects to the ground crew just prior to the 3-minute radio blackout that accompanies re-entry. Finally, after 4 days of nail-biting suspense, the astronauts, mission control, and the rest of the world breathed a sigh of relief. So when some in mission control began to express doubts that the astronauts would return alive, Flight Director Gene Kranz countered their pessimism with, "Gentlemen, I think this is going to be our finest hour." And indeed it was. Apollo 13 became known as a successful failure. The astronauts failed to walk on the moon, but they successfully returned to Earth despite nearly lethal conditions. Just as the crew survived against all odds through those lethal conditions, we too, here on Earth, we survive against all odds on this tiny planet. The Apollo spacecrafts, like our Earth, were designed to maintain human life in the very hostile environment of space. Since human beings can only survive in a very narrow envelope of environmental conditions, these ships must be designed with incredible precision and thousands of components. If one small thing goes wrong, human life is in jeopardy. On Apollo 13, the one small thing that put the crew in jeopardy seems too minor to matter. Oxygen tank number 2 had been accidentally dropped 2 inches at some point prior to its installation. That mere 2-inch drop damaged the tank's thin wall and began a cascade of events that ultimately led to its explosion. Due to the interdependent nature of the components, the failure of the oxygen system led to the failure of other systems and almost to the loss of the spacecraft and crew. Think of it. That one little 2-inch drop led to all the problems the astronauts had to overcome in order to survive. It resulted in too little oxygen, too little water, less power, and too much carbon dioxide and navigation error. Like a small change in the spaceship, a small change in the universe would result in big problems for us as well. As we have seen, scientists have discovered that the universe, like a spacecraft, is precisely designed to create the very narrow envelope of life-supporting conditions here on Earth. Any slight deviation in any one of a number of environmental and physical factors, which we've been calling constants, would mean that we will not exist. And like the components on Apollo 13, these constants are interdependent. A small change in one might affect the others and could prevent or destroy the conditions necessary for life. The extent of the universe's fine-tuning makes the anthropic principle perhaps the most powerful argument for the existence of God. It's not that there are just a few broadly defined constants that may have resulted by chance. No, there are more than 100 very narrowly defined constants that strongly point to an intelligent designer. We've already identified 5 of them. Here are 10 more. Number 1. If the centrifugal force of planetary movements did not precisely balance the gravitational forces, nothing could be held in orbit around the Sun. Number 2. If the universe had expanded at a rate 1 millionth more slowly than it did, expansion would have stopped, and the universe would have collapsed on itself before any stars had formed. If it had expanded faster, then no galaxies would have formed. Number 3. Any of the laws of physics can be described as a function of the velocity of light, now defined to be 299,792,458 meters per second, or 300,000 kilometers per second. So even a slight variation in the speed of light would alter the other constants and preclude the possibility of life on Earth. Number 4. If water vapor levels in the atmosphere were greater than they are now, a runaway greenhouse effect would cause temperatures to rise too high for human life. If they were less, an insufficient greenhouse effect would make the Earth too cold to support human life. Number 5. If Jupiter were not in its current orbit, the Earth would be bombarded with space material. What are those space materials? Asteroids. Jupiter's gravitational field acts as a cosmic vacuum cleaner, attracting asteroids and comets that might otherwise strike Earth. Of course, if you've studied solar system before, you know the asteroid belt that exists between Mars and Jupiter. That's it for now. We're going to continue tomorrow.